So the first thing we're going to do is set up Illustrator the way that we need it to be to do our project. If you do not see the layers menu somewhere on your screen, you can go up to Window, and you can see in here there are all sorts of different menus that you can choose from, but if layers is not checked off, you can check it off here and you will have it in your sidebar here. We are going to start from the beginning, so we are going to create a new file, and based on the directions in the lab, we are going to be cutting out a final shape that is 9.5 inches wide and 7.5 inches tall. So we'll give it a name. And click OK. The magnifying glass tool will be useful to you if you need to get up close to see key details. By default, it is in the zoom in position, but if you hold down the Alt key on your keyboard, it will switch into the zoom out tool. So we will zoom out a little bit by clicking one time. Notice that when we opened up our new document, the rulers were not showing. So let's show our rulers. Next, we are going to set up our guides. Theoretically, you could eyeball this, but the last thing you want to do is spend all sorts of time on an amazing laser design only to discover that once you send it to the laser cutter to do the job, your artwork is actually underneath the edge of the photo frame. So we're going to put some guides in here so that we know exactly where the safe zones are for us to place our artwork. To create a guide, you click anywhere in the vertical ruler or the horizontal ruler, and you drag away, and that will create a guide. Likewise, you can do the same with this side. Guides can be moved at any time. So we are going to place a guide at 1/8 of an inch from each side of the artboard here. Sometimes it can be a little tricky getting it just right, but this is one of those steps that will save you a lot of headache in the long run. Okay, and adjust that guy a little bit. It's trying to help me. There we go. Okay, so we cannot put any artwork in this outer border because the overhang from the picture frame itself will be here. So all artwork should be inside. Next, we will set up our guides that are going to determine the center of our frame, where the wood is going to be cut away. And our opening is 3.5 inches. Okay, I paused the video so I could put the rest of the guides in. So now that we have our guide set up, we can see that this area here is going to be the section of the frame that we will put our text and our artwork inside. Next step is to set up our layers. We already have one layer that is created by default. And in my other project, the blue layer was the cutting layer. So we will do that first. So the next step is to begin designing our plan for our laser cut photo frame. It's easiest to keep all of your work in one Illustrator file. That way, everything stays synchronized. The first step is to define the path for the laser to do the cutting. Since we designed our initial artboard, which is this white space here, to match the overall size of the photo mat as defined in our lab, we need the laser to cut along this outer path to cut out the piece. And of course, we also needed to cut the inner frame so that we can have our picture inside. So in order to tell the laser to perform the cut operation, there are two things we need to do. We need to draw the path, and we can do that by coming over here to find the rectangle tool. Illustrator has lots of helpful little things that it does to try to help you stay situated. If we hover our mouse cursor over the edge in the top little corner here, you can see that the word intersect appears. Once it does this, you know that the beginning of your shape will be exactly at the corner. Click and drag across, and you have created your first path. Since we set up our guides before to define the middle cut, we can do the same thing by clicking in the corner and then dragging across and then letting go. It may not look like it, but we've just created two paths, two rectangles, one inside the other, and they are both centered about the origin, a common center point in the middle of our design file. This is important to think about for later. Once you finish drawing your paths, don't forget to switch back to the arrow tool. If you do not, you will continue to draw rectangles, which we don't want. In order to tell the laser to perform the cut operation on these two paths, it is essential that we do one more step. My Illustrator is set to have its increments in points. If yours is set that way, you can take an additional step going to Edit, Preferences, and Units, and making sure that your stroke weights are in inches because the laser works in inches. After clicking OK, we see that our measurement changes from points to inches. Confirm that your stroke weight is 0.001 inches. This value is what tells the laser to cut. If you do not have 0.001 as your stroke weight, your laser will engrave the shape rather than cut it. Last but not least, since we have created our shapes, they have created themselves in this default layer that I have named cutting. To do that, to do the name, you just double click and you can type and call it whatever you want. So that is the first step, setting up the cut paths for the inner part of the photo frame and the outer edge of the photo frame. In the next video, we will talk about creating our engraving layer and go over a few tools that we can use to add text and clip art and decorate our engraving section of the project.